Dear all, warm greetings from Luxembourg. It is my pleasure and honor to be able to address you through this message. My name is Rehana Schwinninger-Ladek, and I work for the European Union at the European Commission, where I'm in charge of the policies to support digitization, digital preservation, and access to cultural heritage. As you all know, the support to Ukraine has been one of our top priorities since that terrible day, the 24th of February 2022, a date we will never forget. A lot of damage has been done at all levels, including for cultural heritage. Almost 500 cultural centers, almost 500 libraries, more than 55 museums, almost 20 theaters and concert halls have been damaged or destroyed. So there needs to be a collective, joined-up effort to rebuild all these vibrant elements of Ukrainian life and Ukrainian memory. This is why I'm very happy to see that our project, 4CH, represented by Dr. Francesco Tacetti, is present at the discussion today. The 4CH project comes with a wide expertise. It launched the SUM initiative, the Save the Ukrainian Monuments initiative, which did a truly extraordinary work to save entire digital libraries and make sure they were safely preserved in various data centers across the EU. The consortium behind the project has been outstanding in helping their Ukrainian counterparts. But this would not have been possible without the many brave cultural heritage staff in Ukraine who took great risk to fetch the data sets stored in institutional repositories so that they could be transferred and preserved. So I salute their sheer courage and will. Now comes the time where hopefully we can envisage how to repair, to restore, and to rebuild, because the task of preserving memory never stops. It is a time when we can put our expertise and knowledge at your service for the future recovery of Ukraine and the role of cultural heritage in this recovery and revival. And I believe you are all in very good hands with the different speakers attending this conference. I wish you all the best in this important endeavor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, first of all, for organizing this thing, and I really appreciate your efforts. Considering yesterday's the Day of Volunteers, I would like to thank you as well, because it's not only the defenders and those who are helping our army volunteers, there's also the cultural part of volunteering and doing, especially in the heritage preservation, great things. So I appreciate your work and the work of all the others who are here greatly. Sure. Well, I think that all of us who have met before, we've spoken a lot already, and we all know that at least for the date of the 24th of February, we had counted 120,000 objects which are so-called cultural heritage, immovable cultural heritage. And this is for the 24th of February, which means that it doesn't count the Lugansk and Donetsk and Crimea. So we understand that we have and we work with a huge amount of objects in the country. Half of them are architectural, half of them are archaeology. We understand is a very, very complicated thing, but yet all of them are unfortunately and not properly taken into inventories. Basically, the digital inventory actually does not exist in our country yet, and this is something what me and the ministry are hardly working in order to actually make it happen. We understand that due to Ministry of Digital Transformation, which came up to our country 2 years ago, actually the process of digitalization in our country moved on, and thankfully it moved quite in a very big steps, and I'm happy to be here to help with the cultural digitalization. We have collected these 120,000 objects last year with the help of our regional administrations. Basically, what they have done is they've put everything what they had in their paper cards stored in all the places in regional administrations. They've put that online to the so-called declaration system, which we created for them. Why I'm calling that declaration? Because this information has not been yet checked and verified, which is also very important, because right now we have started matching, for example, some addresses with the newest address register, and they do not correspond. So we'll do the verification process anyway, because we understand that during the last 20-30 yes, the names of these streets changed heavily, and in case particular object has never been reconstructed or nothing was built around, we understand that its card is still dated like 1975. So the address of that building might be very, very old right now, which will not correspond to the newly addresses in the cities which we have. So anyhow, we understand that in the meantime, the Ministry of Regional Development, they have already created the system which works with the development and construction. Particularly, all the constructors and builders which work in our country, they have to supply all their documents in order to get all this how to say, разрешение, well, whatever the
permissions,
the governmental permissions. Thank you so much. They need to work through the electronic system, which means that they are actually trying to make it easier, more clear, more transparent, and so on. But there is one very, very serious issue, is that this construction and building system does not work 100% unless all the historical architectural heritage buildings are in that system. And this is a huge problem right now, because we understand that there is this chaotic construction in all the major cities, in Kiev and Odessa and in Kharkov and Dnipro. We know about this huge problem in our country. And this is basically what we are now working with, is trying to create this system which will be interoperable with the system of constructors, the Ministry of Regions, and so that they will work together and block automatically everything what should not be built or has certain limitations of building and construction. These are our main things. But for sure, right now we understand that due to the situation in our country, due to war and heavy bombardments which happen every day, including yesterday, we understand that mainly these 120 objects which are not only architects, as I mentioned, but also the archaeology. And it's a huge problem to preserve the archaeology, because no one actually have ever put that on the map. And right now, when the fields are being bombed, we just don't really follow, because there are still so many places in our country we cannot reach which are occupied. So we understand that basically what is being done in 3D modeling, in scanning of the most important objects, especially of the national value cultural heritage, that's extremely important. Just because we can lose it any day, fortunately, I hope for sure that that doesn't happen, but still we understand that this is the only way to preserve them, is to have them properly scanned or built in 3D model, in order we could rebuild them after that in the authentic way. Yeah, basically I'm still very pleased that this kind of movement, which actually we are all in, and which is like very small still right now in our country. There are very few groups of people who are doing this, but I appreciate also the international teams who are very much involved into helping our country. I thank Fodor and Yana that you got me acquainted with Bashar and his ICONEM, great company. We are right now going into business and governmental partnership with them, and they are really helping us in order we could create a separate system, especially in order to collect all those 3D and scanned models of the buildings which are being done right now. We understand that by now, I mean, since the beginning of the war, since February, we've got a lot of different teams who've done a great job doing this scanning and modeling. But as the Ministry of Culture, I also understand we do not have any understanding of how many of them been scanned, where they are, who is doing with them, whatever. I mean, they are lost somewhere in the universe, and what we are doing together with Bashar, and they have kindly decided to help us with this, is to create a certain system where we could upload everything what was scanned and done since ever, and by this we could create the very, very good picture, governmental and state-wise, in order to see what we have preserved and where we can actually address in case something happens. So I would be finishing in here. I am still so sorry I could not make it, but I am sure that we will meet everyone again very soon, physically, maybe in Lviv, maybe hopefully in Kiev. And I thank you all. Please stay safe.
So ICONEM operated in a lot of countries where the situation wasn't optimal, like in Lebanon, Armenia, Syria, Iraq, in order to preserve and scan all the endangered heritage for our future generations. And as we said, several initiatives have already started the digitization of cultural heritage in Ukraine. Local stakeholders as you, Pixelated Reality, Skyron, Eros 3D, and many more put actively a place of series of heritage documentation programs. And what we do at ICONEM is that we created and developed several tools that we would like to put at the disposal of entities, heritage specialists in different cities of Ukraine affected by war, with the collaboration, as we said, with the Ministry of Culture and the different actors. And ICONEM would like to help the digitization and preservation of the monuments, building, and site in photorealistic 3D. The collaboration was very important. We wanted to make all the people involved in this action throughout the country, bypassing by the ministry. So we decided to create a white book. This white book is going to be able to create a capacity building project in order to provide in order to pass on the photogrammetry knowledge that we have to all people, in order for them to help us and to help the Ukrainian government collect as many data as processable data in order to digitize all the heritage around the countries, whether it's objects, buildings, cities. All these 3D scanning make up the common memory. So the objectives of this capacity building is to provide the photogrammetry equipment by responding to funds with the Ministry of Culture, integrating trainees into shooting processes in order to raise their awareness and train them to new surveying techniques, and train work team in photogrammetry by strengthening their technical skills in the area and leading them to autonomy, producing usable document with local actors even after the war by themselves, because it's important to put all the people of Ukraine in and get them involved in this action. And as we said, flying drones isn't very optimal nowadays in Ukraine. It can be used, but we need to have different and alternative capturing methods, like using poles, cameras, flashes. And ICONEM created a white book that explains step by step all the elements you need to know in order to be able to do this capturing of the data. And we exchange with the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture in order to make this white book the clearer possible. And it's going to be, it's being translated into Ukrainian in order to make it accessible to all. On the other hand, this white book has two parts. The first part that I just talked about is the data acquisition phase, which will start by introducing photogrammetry to the trainees The second step will be to train them on the camera techniques to acquire the most adequate acquiring data techniques. And one step, we will get into different capturing methodologies that will vary, as we said, on the monuments, objects of cities, so depending on the scale. But on the other hand, what was important for us was the data management. So we created with the Ministry of Culture data management white book that will allow the ministry to have a better control on the length of the equipment, because the equipment that is going to be bought is going to be the property of the Ministry of Culture, that's going to spread it around the people who's going to use it to acquire this data. It will permit also for the Ministry of Culture to have a visibility on the program of the surveys and grant secure access to the different data sets for all future users, because security is a very important element in this project, and we wouldn't want all the collected data to be spread all around, because it is the property of the Ministry of Culture, so the property of the Ukraine. And once this step is done, by working with local actors, ICONEM has already created and has been developing an online platform to gather all the 3D models that we scanned all over the world, and making them accessible to everyone. Even on our site, you can see that you can find public models that are accessible to all, that can help anyone discover a site, and with many tools take measurements and etc. And we are currently working at ICONEM to create an alternative platform that resembles ours, in order to gather all the 3D models and making them accessible to all local actors. And first of all, the Ministry of Culture, with who we are working, with Pixelated Reality, Skyron, Air 3D, and all the other actors. And last but not least, what we are trying to create, and it's going to be done by the end of January, is to create an uploader to be able to upload all the data and the processed models that are already been made onto the platform, making it like a gathering of all the models, so that we don't go doing like 3D modeling on the same monument twice, and it would give us a clearer version on what's being done and what has to be done. And we hope that this project will happen, and will be a good success, thanks to the Ministry of Culture and thanks to Pixelated Realities and all the other actors, because we're having weekly or every 2 weeks meetings in order to see the evolution and adapting to the current situation, because we're aware that everything is changing, and one of our objectives is to respond to these changes in the best way, in coordination with all the actors in Ukraine and in Europe.
I believe that despite being in a dramatic and not humanly understandable situation, there have also been some lights in this period, and I hope that can lead us to a better future. As for CH, I try to now explain. As for CH, we promoted a campaign aimed at safeguarding the Ukrainian digital cultural heritage. This campaign brought us in contact with many European institutions and beyond. And this campaign also allowed us to establish many contacts with Ukrainian colleagues. And I tell you this because what is of utmost importance is that I can assure you that all the people we have had contact with have always demonstrated a unique unity of purposes in trying to build a team, a united group that could be actually effective in the attempt of to safeguard Ukrainian digital assets. And so I want to thank again all the people who helped us, starting from Ukrainian colleagues and FFAN SDG Foundation, and in particular its president Maurizio Aronica. Thank you, Maurizio, for the help. Oh, now I want to speak of digitization, but probably using different terms, because digitization is certainly fundamental step to help safeguard and preserve digital heritage. Digitization obviously concerns many aspects and many types of data, all interconnected with each other. 3D models are certainly of utmost importance because they are able to render the external appearance of object, but to be complete in describing the state of a monument, they should be integrated with other data from scientific measurement that can characterize the material. In addition, 3D models and point clouds have often been used, and this is just to show how the data are powerful, has been used in the past to evaluate statics of historic buildings and plan any consolidation intervention. There are other point clouds and 3D models from different measurements that can give idea, for example, of internal state of monuments. For example, I'm thinking to the statue of the Duke in Odessa, just to have an idea of the internal status of the statues. And in this case, 3D can be created with tomographies, okay? So we are facing, when we speak of digitization in the field of the cultural heritage, we face a lot of aspects. And I'm saying all this to point out that the amount of data useful for the conservation and the restoration of cultural heritage is very vast, and that digitization should be able to cover all these aspects. And this means that it's essential that this teamwork is carried out by both technological side together with national institute in charge of the protection of cultural heritage. Furthermore, but we have already said in some way, once digitized, the data must be made available, interpretable, and reusable. Therefore, we need a different data access platform, and that must be defined according to the type of the user, because we may have a user from the ministry, and this is in Europe is really a problem because, for example, in Italy, but not only in Italy, in several countries, the owner is the Ministry of Cultural Heritage. In other countries, no. So we have really different, different policies to access this data. Furthermore, another essential point is to guarantee the interoperability between different formats and formats that may refer to the same type of measurement, and also interoperability sometimes is not obvious. So the panorama of digitization concerns many aspects, and the creation of an effective system for the conservation of cultural heritage from a practical point of view is not impossible, but it's quite complicated because we have to face all the aspects, because also we need to know also the matter of the monuments and so on. And we may have also additional problem also because in order to be effective, the system should be able to dialogue with all the institutions, public and private institutions of the cultural heritage panorama, and at different level, at European level, at national level, regional level, local level, and so on. So the construction of a competence center, but also the interaction in other countries is not so straightforward. As for CH, we are defining the guidelines for digitization, starting from all the documentation and recommendation produced over the years by European and international projects and institutions. At the same time, we are defining the minimum requirements for services that will be offered for the visualization of 3D models and for services dedicated to the analysis and to the reuse of scientific data, because 4CH will take care of 3D models, but also to the associated data, also intangible data. We are
a short question.
Yes, you can.
You talked about the data ownership problem, and that in some countries it is the ministry who is the owner. In other countries, it may be the scientific institute. In Ukraine, we here have this kind of a problem where different businesses and even NGOs like us or even individuals collect data with 3D surveys. And sometimes, of course, they're willing to share, but sometimes it's something that required them 3, 4, 5 years of dedication and resources, often personal resources, to be involved to do this job. So it's even a question for the whole panel. Do you think the use of the data later should be somehow reimbursed for these individuals, or should this data be automatically accessible by the law?
This depends by national rules. So we have we are 27 states at present. We have 27 different rules for managing the data. And so we have to see, and this is one of the challenges of 4CH, because in our opinion, because this data may be used for not only for restoration, for conservation, and so on, but also, for example, for virtual realities, gaming, and so on. Okay, so these rules cannot be, in my opinion, cannot be decided at European level, because at European level, what you can do, you can say to the member states, okay, we would like that you act in this way. But after is the member states that will decide about its own policy, okay? So, in my opinion, is not so simple, because Europe can give recommendation from this point of view. In my opinion, we have to prepare different layers, and what we are doing as 4CH, we are layer means access policy to the data. Okay, because for example, I'm sure that I cannot give the 3D scan of, for example, Uffizi in Florence to everybody, because this is impossible from a legal point of view. On the other side, there may be some method for in the future to leave this data accessible under certain condition, and but this problem it must be faced nation by nation, okay, so country by country, because it's impossible to establish at present a common rule. What we can do now, and what we are doing, we are mapping the needs of cultural heritage conservators, this at European level. We are remapping technologies available for diagnostics prior to the intervention on cultural heritage and so on. We are mapping also technologies for continuous monitoring of the state of conservation of cultural heritage. And as 4CH, for the storage, we are oriented towards the creation of a national repositories, okay, so at least one repository for each state, but for sure in Italy we will have more than one, also at regional level, and we can provide services for 3D models and for scientific data based on cloud, okay? So that everybody can use the services, but the data should stay in principle in their nation, okay, cultural heritage data. And this is what we have seen so far in the interaction with the other member states. At present, keep in account that for CH is but you will have another presentation about 4CH, but in 4CH we are 11 member states from Europe and plus Moldova and Switzerland. So we are 13, we are increasing, we have started a pilot to see what we can do. 4CH is devoted to digitization. Obviously, we start with 3D models because 3D models are perfect also for can represent the artwork, the monument, the site, and can contain inside the model also other kind of data, and must be linked also to other data that can be used by restoration, national restoration centers, but also private bodies for the conservation.
Дякую за запрошення, що можна долучитися до такої конференції важливої. Я хочу розказати про часи, які настали у Львові, в Україні, починаючи з лютого 22-го року.
I'm sorry, we will transfer the mic for this first panel only. I want to I want to say welcome to the participant, and I want to talk about the hard times which started here in Lviv and Ukraine from the 24th of February.
And I would like to introduce my short presentation and Отже, стратегії у нас не було, звичайно. Ми почали робити так, як ми собі уявляли. На щастя, у нас були партнери за кордоном, які нам надали допомогу. Допомога нам була дуже потрібна. І перше зауваження в нас – це треба мати стратегію на такий час. Друге зауваження – треба мати партнерів за кордоном. Ми їх мали.
So we were very happy and lucky to have the help of our foreign partners from other countries. So if we advise for the situations like we have, you should first try to have the strategy beforehand, and second, you should have international partners.
Партнери, з якими ми працювали до війни, нам допомогли відразу отримати матеріали для забезпечення пам'яток, оскільки перше, що ми вирішили, це будемо захищати наші пам'ятки, особливо крихкі це вітражі, скульптури, які стоять на відкритому просторі і потребують захисту.
First thing which our international partners helped us with was the materials, especially for the protection and conservation of tangible objects like vitrage and various objects on the open air which could be affected because of the shelling.
Ми отримали підтримку від Інституту Полоніка, це фонд в Польщі, від фонду Аліф, від фонду Принца Клауса. І це були фактично ті перші допомоги, які отримав Львів і якими ми поділилися з іншими містами України.
We received the support from Polonika Polish Foundation, from Alif Foundation, and from Prince Claus Foundation, which and this support we not only used ourselves but also shared with other cities.
Дуже швидко ми зробили таку платформу в Zoom, де були всі історичні міста України, і особливо ті міста на Сході, які вже зазнали руйнування. Ми говорили про їхні потреби і матеріали, які ми отримували від наших фундацій, ми передавали їм.
Very quickly we organized a Zoom platform where lots of historical cities from all over Ukraine were participating, and especially the cities from the east of Ukraine, and we communicated about their needs and sent them the materials they required.
Щодо, власне, 3D візуалізації, це ми, звичайно, до війни цим займалися, але це було скоріше поодинокі об'єкти, над якими ми планували працювати по проектах, і у нас не було багато, може 2-3 об'єкти у Львові тільки зіскановано. Очевидно, після війни, на початку війни ми впритул зайнялися цим 3D-скануванням.
As for the 3D objects, of course, before the war we had this kind of projects, but they were 1 or 2 or 3 buildings 3D scanned in Lviv. So when the war started, we had to focus on the 3D scanning a lot.
На щастя, у Львові є фірма, яка цим займається, і ми зразу до них звернулися, щоб почати цю роботу. Також ми отримали кошти від фонду АЛІФ на сканування проєктної документації архіву, великого архіву, який в нас є, зберігається. І це дуже важливо, щоб той архів був збережений, власне, в форматі інвентаризований.
So we have a company in Lviv which luckily does 3D scanning, so we at once address them with our tasks, and also it is important that ALIF Foundation helped us to digitize, to start digitization of project documentation, which is very important, and it's a huge archive which needs to be preserved.
Ну і проблема, про яку ви вже тут говорили, для нас також актуальна, де зберігати ці матеріали зіскановані чи 3D-візуалізацію. Зараз вона є в компанії, яка виконує ці роботи, але ми розуміємо, що ми маємо мати свій архів і також десь копії в безпечному місці, щоб зберегти, власне, ці матеріали. Поки що ця проблема не вирішена, бо це дуже великий масив інформації, який мав би мати десь загальне місце.
And we already talked here on the discussion about the problem with the data, and right now all the digitized materials are stored in the company servers, but of course we need to have our own digital archive. And from Yana Boisova, I will also add that this first panel, it is much more transformative than I expected from it, but I am really thankful that we have such a conversation, and I wanted to have a small period of time for the questions from the audience, and if there are people who want to ask questions from Zoom or from the audience here, you're welcome. So on this panel we were talking about the sharing of experience of digitization and preservation of cultural heritage with EU countries, between EU countries and Ukraine, and how some of the projects are already successful in their activities. We wanted to show that on lots of the levels of stakeholders there are people acting, there are standards which are being developed, there are foundations which support the process. And further on in the next panels and presentations we will address the future impact which we want to see, and also the needs which we need to cover in order for this to be more successful, more scaled, and for the ambitious goal of Cultural Ministry to have all the heritage accounted. We need to work together as a community.